Nintendo music has consistently been the best combination of funk, jazz, and soul, all while maintaining this playful essence and really immersing you in the experience of playing a silly game. They've managed to sneak in so much jazz language into their games, enough to the point where the regular player won't be repelled by the complexity, but it still raises the eyebrows of musicians who will listen and be like, hold on, what was that? Many people have analyzed and given credit to the true genius behind this music, but one game that I don't see anyone talking about dates back to 2010. Wii Party has some of the funkiest music Nintendo's ever put out, and I was listening to the soundtrack the other day catching complete vibes. I'm pretty surprised that other than an occasional comment expressing nostalgia under the song, no one's really saying much about the Wii Party soundtrack and all the great things it has in store. So I want to do a deep dive into some of my favorite songs from this track and see what we can take from the genius of Ryo Nagamatsu. So the very first song you hear when you load up the game is obviously the main title theme. This plays on loop until you press a button to start the experience. Title themes have a lot riding on them because it's the first musical impression a player is going to get of your game, and as a composer, you have to deliver. And they delivered. Take a listen. So already, they're opening up with high energy and upbeat vibe and relatively simplistic harmony, but there are some cool things Nagamatsu decided to do here. For starters, let's take a look at the rhythm. As you may notice, there's a bit of syncopation going on, where the chords are hitting on the upbeats of the melodic lines. These accentuated upbeats are found in the genres of music where dancing is most prevalent, because it really forces you to feel the rhythm rather than just hear the downbeats along with a bland melody that lacks rhythmic character. This aligns perfectly with the vibe of a party, and if you play the game, you can see the little Mii characters dancing and jumping around while the music plays, really fitting the vibe. When we look at what's going on harmonically, we can see some interesting things happening. The introduction is pretty simple, with a descending chord progression that's very common in jazz and blues. So we're in the key of F, and we're essentially going from the 1 chord to the 6, and then down to the 5, but putting transition chords in between that are a half step above each of our main chords. As I previously stated, we hear this a lot in the blues, but it usually functions as an ending. Let me change the rhythm a bit and play what I'm hearing when I see these chords. So you may have heard something like that before, and it pretty clearly signals the end to a tune, but here it's used to start the tune. And I think the notable characteristic that makes it clear is the prolonged 5 chord. Instead of just holding the B flat over C and then going to our 1 chord F, Nagamatsu keeps us on the 5 and shifts the quality of the B flat to be minor, which makes it a lot more clear that there's more music to be played. And the melody does a good job of indicating that as well, with an ascending line that tells us we're only just starting. Okay, cool. It's going to be a nice tune in F. Let's hear the first section. Wait, what? We're definitely not in F anymore, even though the intro just told us that's where we would be. And it's not like we're only a half step away either. We're in D now. Why did Nagamatsu just switch the key on us, and why did it still sound good? Well, he used a cool device that takes advantage of the concept of a parallel minor. When we play in any major key, the key signature we're in also corresponds to a minor scale, whose tonic note is 3 half steps below the tonic note of our major scale. So since we're in F major at the beginning, we share all the same notes as the D minor scale. And guess what? D is the key center that we ended up modulating to, but it just became major. So to the ear, it can kind of be heard as a shift from minor to major, which effectively justifies the modulation. So, we're in D now, and the progression Nagamatsu writes for this part is pretty simple. Let's listen. So here, we're very diatonic, primarily following a 3-6-2-5 progression. A cool chord here is the 4th chord that we see in this section. The upper structure of the chord is B dominant 7, which is just the 6th chord. But instead of our bass note being a B, it's F, meaning that Nagamatsu used a tritone substitution here for easier voice leading. Tritone subs in the bass are commonly used, and it just means you're using a bass note that's a tritone, exactly half of an octave, away from the note that you would have played to indicate the harmony. And despite tritones being so dissonant, This works strangely well to functionally indicate the harmony. So since F is in between the bass notes of the two surrounding chords, it's used as our bass note to make for better transition. If he kept the B there, it would have been fine as well. Now, when we move on in this section, we see the 2-5-3-6 chord progression used twice. Very common, simple progression. But then, right after that, we hear a B-flat major chord. Now, this can be interpreted in two ways. The first way is to see it as though we're borrowing from the key of F major again, simply putting the 4 chord in to provide contrast and make for a nice chromatic movement to the A dominant 7. Another way to view this is by recognizing that it's a half step away from the chord that we're trying to hit, and that we're utilizing tritone substitution again. We have the A dominant 7 in our sights, and rather than just preceding it with the E minor 7, our 2, we move the E a tritone away to B flat and make it major so that it roughly matches the quality of the A7. This provides a nice contrast, breaking the cycle of 2-5-3-6 that we were riding in for a moment. When we repeat this section, we arrive at this part again, but instead, Nagamatsu decides to give us the 2 chord for an ambient little 2-bar section that transitions us out of the main part of this tune. This part features a little bell-like synth accompanied by rhythmic hits of the E minor 7 chord. It's a cool little section because we don't hear the main saxophone-ish lead for a moment, and it's like the music just rides out for a bit before we enter the tunnel of modulation. Let's listen to this next part. And from here, the song just loops. And the place it loops from is pretty cool, but first I want to talk about what we heard at the beginning of the section. So we're back in F now, and we run through a 2-5-3-6 again. The way we got there though is super cool. So earlier I explained the downward minor third modulation that musicians do all the time, and here we're switching back. With these minor third modulations, because these groupings of key centers share so many of the same notes, you can pretty seamlessly transition between them all the time, as long as the voice leading is somewhat good. What Nagamatsu does here is he intentionally goes to the F sharp minor 7 chord, the 3 chord of D major, to be his transition chord. This is intelligent, because now we're only a half step away from G minor 7, the 2 chord in F major. Those 2 chords share the same exact quality, so it's just a literal shift of all the notes up a half step. And shifting a chord up a half step is always smooth, so he easily solved the transitional aspect of the modulation. So after the 2-5-3-6 chord progression we get right after modulating to F, we kind of get a closing statement of this very brief section. Here we get another instrumental groove period while the melody isn't playing, and we travel from the 4 to the 3 to the 2 and back up to the 3 before hitting our last chord, the 5. Just a side note, I love the way the 5 chord is voiced here, with the B flat major being stacked on top of a C bass. This is very common in R&B and soul music because it gives you the unresolvedness of having all the notes in the 4 chord present, but the certainty and strength of a 5 chord by having that C in the bass. To end this tune off, Nagamatsu uses this voicing and locks every pitched instrument onto the same rhythm, which is just a beautiful way to end this, and we see it a lot in disco and funk music. I really like how this whole section provides such stark contrast to the high energy of the beginning section. Not only do we shift to F, which is a much darker key than D major, we also kind of shift to a halftime feel. Since this is a title theme, you really shouldn't be waiting long enough to hear that section before pressing play, as it comes in 34 seconds into the song. But I find it so satisfying that the player almost gets rewarded for waiting that long before starting the game, because the song could have easily just repeated that beginning section, and if a player was experiencing some type of difficulty or holdup, like friends taking extra time to join in, it would just play on loop, getting boring after a while. But it's like Nagamatsu recognizes that you're taking more time than normal and acknowledges it by giving you a whole new section of the song, almost saying, don't worry, take your time. And the way it loops back to the introduction in F is awesome. Overall, the song is really good, giving us a high energy glimpse into what's to come in this party-based game, perfectly encapsulating the essence of the very stimulating title screen and giving us a nice loop that's pleasant to listen to. After a very weird intro from Party Phil, we get our second song of the soundtrack, and here our vibe completely shifts. Let's listen to the first section of the song. This is way different than the uptempo vibe we just had. Here, we've dropped the tempo about 40 BPM, and our lead synth is now more of a sine wave. We've transformed our original groove into a much more funky, slowed down one. Why did Nagamatsu do this? Well, I have a pretty good guess as to the reason why he decided to change it up. If you play the game or watched a playthrough, you know that the song plays while the player is sifting through all the options of minigames and characters. Here's what I think. When we look through options, it can be anything. We generally want little external stimulus while we think. Whether you're ordering food or looking at what to buy, you don't want high energy party music playing behind you, drowning out your thoughts. As an example, shop theme music is generally calm and it lacks a lot of flashy melodic lines so that the player can actually lock in and figure things out. I feel like if these first two themes were to switch places, with the title theme becoming the menu theme and the menu theme becoming the title theme, it would be a far worse experience sitting at the menu hearing like, yeah, the music sounds great, but I can't really focus. I feel like the menu theme could work decently well as a title theme, but it does lack the energy. And the name of this game is Wii Party, so the first thing you hear should probably be representative of that. So that's my theory on why the menu theme sounds like this. Now let's get into the harmony, because this stuff gets good. Okay, so you instantly get hit by some cool chords. The first two serving as a 2-5 progression to an E-flat major. Except we don't go there. Instead, Nagamatsu takes us to another 2-5 progression, but this time in C minor. The 5 here is written as a D-flat dominant 7 chord, which is a tritone substitution of a G dominant 7, which would take us to C minor. But I think he decided to use the tritone sub to avoid repeating chords with the G in the bass, since what we do right after this is a 3-6-2-5 in the key of E-flat major. The 3 chord, G minor, doesn't work as well being preceded by a G dominant 7. So with some smooth playing in the bass transitioning the two chords, the player doesn't notice that the roots of these consecutive chords are tritone apart. Cool. So this 4-bar progression goes on to repeat 3 more times, with small variants in the melody, and then we get our B section of the song. And I personally find this part to be really interesting harmonically. But hold on, real quick. If you're new here, I want to introduce myself. I'm Zay, and I play jazz piano and compose music. I really love to harmonically analyze songs that I find interesting, and to take what I can from these songs to add to my own playing and writing. If anything I say or do on here connects with you, it would be awesome if you join the community. And if you have any corrections, notes, or things to add regarding anything I may have said or shown you, I truly encourage you to start the discussion down below. My goal here is to make a safe space for people to nerd out over the theory and methods behind good music, regardless of genre. So the more we can do to refine and optimize this space, the better it's gonna get. So I encourage you to let me know your favorite part of the video, or maybe recommend songs that I can analyze in the future. Now let's take a listen to the B section. Okay, so there's a good amount to unpack here. The first chord featured in this section is our D-flat dominant 7 again, being used as a tritone substitution for the G dominant 7, bringing us a 5-1 feel in C minor. Then we get this really cool transition chord, A-flat minor over B, functioning to lead us to an E-flat major chord over B-flat. But did you notice it yet? For this whole section, the bass notes of each chord have been descending by a half step. This is a brilliant move by Nagamatsu, and it's a cool little Easter egg for musicians who may be transcribing this piece. It's such a cool contrast from the relatively repetitive chord progression that we saw at the beginning of the song, and it really helps define this bridge section. Let's see if the motif continues. As you can see here, it does continue for the next 3 bars. We have an F7, our 2 chord with a dominant quality, over an A. This moves us to an A-flat diminished. Our next 2 chords function as a 3 and a 6 to bring us to the minor 2 chord, F minor, beginning the last section. Before we go on though, I want to appreciate how Nagamatsu writes his bridges. If you've noticed when going through both of these songs, the bridge section is always more legato and less rhythmic and perky than the A sections. Again, this is really to highlight that waiting feeling. That feeling of you not being too quick to press play or pick your game mode, and the game almost reminding you of the time passing by giving you a checkpoint in the music. I find it really nice. Now let's listen to how he closes this tune out. This part provides high contrast to the slower bridge section we just got. While still groovy, the bridge was much more legato and laid back, with the organ-like lead synth almost fading into the background with the chords. But now we're hearing heavy syncopated hits with hyper drum fills in between them. The chords are doing something really cool. While we're repeating this rhythmic motif 4 times, the chords have their own little pattern as well. If you notice, the F minor 9 chord, our 2 chord, briefly moves down to E minor 9 for one hit, before moving right back up. The melody follows as well, moving from the G to the F sharp and back up to the G. This completely parallel movement of literally every pitched instrument is almost jolting, and combined with the drum fills, it's almost as though the game's telling you that you're taking a little too long and trying to speed you up. Now, obviously there are no real punishments for taking as long as you need to in a menu screen, but it's cool how the game subtly tells you to hurry up before the song resets. We see this chordal pattern for the next 4 bars. In bars 3 and 4, G minor 9, our 3 chord, is used as the main chord, and in bars 5 and 6, it becomes F minor 7 again. For our last 2 bars, however, we go to the 1 chord, and instead of going up a half step on the last beat of the first bar in the 2-bar sequence, we go up to E major 7, keeping the motif of this parallel movement between the chords, but providing almost an answer to the previous phrases by going in the opposite direction. From there, it loops, and this concludes the main menu theme. Another notable tune to listen to is the Rankings theme, which plays when you select that option on the main menu screen. This 28-second jingle really emulates R&B a lot more, while keeping the same essence of the previous songs. Let's listen to the beginning. This almost sounds like a slower, smoother spin-off of the main theme. We're still in E flat major, and we're using a lot of the same chords that we just heard in the previous song. We're just changing the feel from being funky and soulful to a more intimate and spacious one. And when you look at what's going on when you're in the screen, it makes sense. As I stated before, this track plays when a player is viewing rankings for each minigame, friend rankings, and other results. This screen is almost a period of intermission where the player can reflect on what they've accomplished in the game, and here you aren't really doing anything but just reviewing. There's nothing you can change while you're on the screen, you're just solely gathering information, which really justifies the airy and ambient feel of the music. You're really just floating around at a bird's eye view, gathering intel of all the scores and rankings. It's a very chill moment, and Nagamatsu encapsulates it perfectly with the song. When we look at the music, he's using a very common R&B progression, just changed a little bit. When I hear these chords, I immediately think of Body Party by Sierra. Here are these chords modulated to E flat major. As you can see, instead of resolving to C minor from the first chord, Nagamatsu chooses to give us a tritone substitution of the G dominant 7 to free up the G bass for our 3 chord, G minor 7. And then he goes up to the C dominant 7, which loops really well back to A flat major 7. We repeat this one more time and then get on to the second section. Let's take a listen. Here, we get the same vibe that we heard at the end of the main menu theme, where the music becomes more rhythmic and every instrument suddenly locks onto the same pattern. The music here is really similar to the end of the main menu theme, but I don't think this part serves to speed the player up here. Instead, it still keeps that halftime, slow-paced energy, but it just provides a little bit of rhythmic contrast to complement the first section. It more so serves as a bridge here, so the airy, ambient first section doesn't get too boring. At the end, we hold our 5 chord, and it loops back to the 4 chord at the beginning of the song. Overall, this is just some really calm, but still groovy ambience that puts the stress and energy of the competition to the side for a moment while the player takes in all the data. Before we look at our next one, I want to give a really quick shout out to the song that plays when you enter the matchup game mode. Because of limited time, it didn't quite make the cut for songs I wanted to talk about here, but it still sounds incredible and I gotta play a little bit of it for you. Yeah, this song is beautiful. We're going back to this disco kind of groove, and overall I think it's just a really solid song. I'd recommend checking it out because there is a lot of cool stuff in it. However, I want to look at a song on Wii Party that doesn't exactly follow the same groove that all the other tunes do. In the Wii Party Globetrot game mode, players travel around the world, visiting different countries with the goal of collecting souvenir photos, which you can also buy with coins that you earn from winning the minigames in this mode. The music that plays in between these minigames is really cool though, and it embraces a Latin feel and has some interesting harmonic progression. Let's listen. First of all, I find it cool that there's a brief 4-bar intro that's in the same key as the menu theme, which is the previous music the player would hear when selecting the game mode. It uses the same organ sound as the bridge section of the menu theme, which is pretty nice. Getting into the actual song, we open with a piano pattern that alternates from G major 7 to C major, but it keeps the G as a pedal point between the two chords. Accompanying that part is a traditional clave rhythm used in Latin music. It's a brilliant way to start the tune because it leaves a lot of room for the song to grow. And that's exactly what it does, as the drums pick up and the melody comes in after 8 bars. The chords and the piano pattern stay the same for the next 8 bars, and a nice simplistic melody gives us the exposition for the song. But then we get into some cool chordal motion. We follow the circle of fourths for a bit, starting with the 2-5-1 to our 4 chord, C major, and then moving to an F dominant 13 to function as the 5 for B flat minor. Here we then do a 2-5 progression for A flat major, but we don't hit the home chord. Instead, we do that same 2-5 down a half step to get us back to G major. The melody during this section is cool too, because during our initial 2-5 to A flat major, it plays a nice line that indicates that resolution is ahead, but instead of us resolving, it repeats itself down a half step to match the downward shift in the chords. And I have to note the montuna that the piano does in the background to provide rhythmic contrast. Even that pattern repeats itself and shifts down a half step. After this, we have a nice 4-bar break with the initial piano chord vamp coming back, accompanied by a legato-like sine synth, and then we're right back in. This section is almost exactly the same as the first one, but we do something a little different at the bridge. After the 4-chord cycle ending in F13, we don't go back to the B flat minor 7. Instead, it becomes major, and we proceed to follow the circle of fourths with major chords until hitting D flat, and Nagamatsu makes it dominant. The melody during the cycle is super interesting, outlining the chords using the 3rd, 5th, and the 7th of each one to form the shape of a minor chord using the notes of each major 7 chord. Now, when we approach the D flat dominant 7, the melody does the exact same thing, highlighting the F, A flat, and the C on D flat major 7. The problem is, this isn't another major 7 chord. If you listen closely, you can hear a B voiced in the piano chord, indicating that this is in fact dominant. So why don't we really hear the dissonance? Well, Nagamatsu moves from this D flat dominant 7 to an F minor 7, and in the melody, he outlines the F minor 7 chord in its entirety, descending through each note. What that does is it creates a pyramid-like melodic line that just goes up the F minor 7 chord and back down. So the player isn't really noticing the dissonance, because Nagamatsu pivots away from it so smoothly, writing the melody in a way where it just works. And as to the reason why this is dominant instead of just being major 7 like the last 3 chords, most likely just a personal choice. It would have sounded fine either way, and Nagamatsu was just being creative here to keep it interesting. When we look ahead from this part, we see that the F minor 7 here is part of a 2-5 in the key of E flat major, and the melody follows it well, outlining that F minor 7 and ending it smoothly with 2 more notes. But what we do after is super interesting, because he just goes straight from a 2-5 in the key of G major. Harmonically, this isn't really too logical, but again, Nagamatsu writes the melody so smoothly that it almost feels like the most logical way to harmonize that part if provided the melody. He essentially repeats that melodic line down a half step and changes the end part to fit with the D7 chord. But this is so awesome because he took advantage of the upper structures of A minor 7 to follow that same pattern, outlining an E minor 7 chord, which becomes present in A minor 7 when you add the 9th and the 11th. So again, because of some smooth voice leading in the melody, Nagamatsu can get away with such an interesting jump in the chords. And from here, since we were easily able to move back to G major, this sets us right up to loop the song. But Nagamatsu takes us through a 4-bar break section where it's just drums and then an 8-bar vamp of the G major 7 and the C major over G piano pattern we just heard. After that, he loops us back to the beginning. I think that loop spot is really cool because it gives the listener time to recover after the harmonic journey we just went on. It also makes it a little less clear where exactly or if we even looped, because the vamp at the end fits so well with the vamp at the beginning, making the entire section feel like a break that extends the song. So this game mode lasts for 10 rounds, but it is possible to go into an overtime round. During this overtime round, the music completely shifts away from the feel that we were in previously. Let's listen to a bit of it and briefly talk about what it's doing differently. As we can hear, the whole time we're shifting from this F major over G chord to a G major over A, which is just a whole step up from that. In each 16 bar sequence, we do that 7 times, but end with the sequence B flat major over C to C major over D, another whole step movement. We can consider these to almost be sus chords, but not exactly, because we're using the 7th as well, and barring the 5th. Traditional sus chords are comprised of the 1st, 2nd, and 5th scale degree, or the 1st, 4th, and 5th scale degree, the differentiation being notated by the number next to the word sus in the chord symbol. But these chords are like sus chords, except they have both the 2nd and 4th scale degree, as well as the flatted 7th. So the whole time here in this main section, Nagamatsu's giving us these sus chords and just shifting them around. This really contributes to the unresolved, almost frantic feel that the song has. Listening to how it's orchestrated, the tempo is about 30 BPM faster than the main song, and rather than a Latin groove, we have an up-tempo drum pattern being played. The song doesn't really seem to have a home key, although the melody vaguely indicates that we might be in C. This isn't a very song-like track where we undergo our harmonic journey and have an expressive and dynamic melody. This track really just serves to speed the player up, telling them, hey, this is overtime, focus. I think the way the track's put together is perfect, because it still keeps that Wii Party essence in which the music still sounds playful and childlike, but it really conveys what's meant to be conveyed here. So, as you can see, there's so much to talk about when listening to the Wii Party soundtrack. All of the songs have such star quality about them, and they all seem to be perfect for whatever moments they were assigned to. I really only covered 40 of the tunes, and this video is already well over 20 minutes. There are over 100 jingles and songs to listen to, so I would strongly encourage checking them out and seeing what you can take from them. I hope this video was educational for those looking to further their knowledge in music theory and song composition. I know I learned a lot from taking a deep dive into these songs. There will definitely be more videos like this in the future because I really enjoy talking about the theory behind popular music. And remember, if you have any things to add or any critiques, maybe about the way I explain something, don't hesitate to start the discussion in the comments. Until next time.
Oh, hi, thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
Garbage, garbage, garbage.